In 1964, the Republican Party was in a civil war.
Precisely 1 year ago today, on July 14th, 1963, I warned that the Republican Party is in real danger of subversion by a radical, well-financed, highly disciplined majority.
Segregationists, angry that the party wouldn't commit to rolling back civil rights, had already joined forces with paranoid McCarthyists, who were similarly convinced that the whole civil rights brouhaha was just the result of communist subversion. In
the past hour, we have offered only a brief survey of the material that's available to support the charge that the civil rights movement, as we know it today, is simply part of a worldwide movement organized and directed by communists to enslave all mankind.
Some of the libertarian businessmen who were frustrated with the Republicans' unwillingness to roll back the New Deal started to bankroll them. This far-right coalition won at the convention. They elected Barry Goldwater to be president, a man who had voted against civil rights not because he was racist, he promised.
I will never vote for a public accommodations clause in any civil rights bill because I think it's unconstitutional. I think it tampers with the rights of assembly, the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the freedom of property.
In my home state, we have very few public places that remain segregated by pointing out to business people that it is morally wrong to practice discrimination, and it's also economically bad. This type of approach, while I know it's time-consuming, it is having its effect, will have its effect, and I think it will achieve what we want.
Well, like what year? In 1967, in 1979, in 1983? Is it okay during the intervening times that a black kid in a high school baseball team can't stay at a motel?
This is the basic disagreement between the Negro community and Senator Goldwater. They don't think he's prejudiced. They don't think he's a racist. I don't think he's a racist. But they can't go along with a man who says we ought to let what's going on in Mississippi be settled by Mississippi, and the federal government ought to knit or do something else. This we can't take.
Well, if Goldwater ever becomes president, one thing his presence in the White House will do, it will make black people in America have to face up to facts, probably for the first time in many, many years. And this in itself is good, in that Goldwater is a man who's not capable of hiding his racist tendencies, and at the same time, he's not capable of even pretending to Negroes that he's their friend. So this will have a tendency to make the Negro, probably for the first time, do something to stand on his own feet and solve his own problem, instead of putting himself in a position to be misled, misused, exploited by the whites who pose as liberals only for the purpose of getting the support of the Negro. So in one sense, Goldwater's coming in will awaken the Negro, and it will probably awaken the entire world, more so than the world has been awakened since Hitler.
For the first time, a major political party has nominated a man who articulates views that are totally out of harmony with the mainstream of American thought, and views that are more in line with the 18th century than the 20th century.
Not because he was racist, he promised, but because it violated people's economic liberty. This takeover completely alienated blacks from the party.
Communist imperialism, communism. Into communist captivity with communism, brand communism, and communism, and the governments it now controls are enemies of every man on earth who is or wants to be free. I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
You'll recall this from Hillary's America.
Tens of thousands of Klansmen marched on New York City shouting racist slogans and burning crosses to celebrate the Democratic Party's refusal to condemn the KKK in their platform, in their platform, in their platform, in their platform.
At the 1964 Republican Convention, Nelson Rockefeller had proposed an amendment condemning the KKK. Nelson Rockefeller had proposed an amendment condemning the KKK.
Mr. Chairman, Congressman Laird, fellow delegates, alternates, and friends, I move that the language read by Senator Scott be inserted in the proposed 1964 Republican platform. 1964 Republican platform. 1964 Republican platform. The time has come for the Republican Party to face this issue realistically and take decisive action. It is essential that this convention repudiate here and now any doctrine doctrinaire militant minority, whether communist, Ku Klux Klan, or Bircher.
Nolan, that was, California leader for Goldwater.
Which would subvert this party to purposes alien to the very basic tenets which gave this party birth.
Senator Dirksen of Illinois.
As President Eisenhower said only 2 hours ago from this very rostrum, the Republican Party should reject extremism from either the left or the right. Precisely 1 year ago today, on July 14th, 1963, I warned that the Republican Party is in real danger of subversion by a radical, well-financed, highly disciplined majority. A minority wholly alien to the sound and honest conservatism that has firmly based the Republican Party in the best of a century's tradition. Wholly alien to the sound and honest Republican liberalism that has kept this party abreast of human needs.
He was booed and shouted down. He was booed and shouted down. What happened next is best described by baseball legend Jackie Robinson, who was at the convention as the delegate for Rockefeller. From his autobiography.
Early in 1964, I wrote a speaking out piece for the Saturday Evening Post. A Barry Goldwater victory would ensure that the GOP would become completely the white man's party. What happened at San Francisco when Senator Goldwater became the Republican standard-bearer confirmed my prediction. I wasn't altogether caught off guard by the victory of the reactionary forces in the Republican Party, but I was appalled by the tactics they used to stifle their liberal opposition. That convention was one of the most unforgettable and frightening experiences of my life. The hatred I saw was unique to me because it was hatred directed against the white man. It embodied a revulsion for all he stood for, including his enlightened attitude toward black people. I will never forget the fantastic scene of Governor Rockefeller's ordeal as he endured what must have been 3 minutes of hysterical abuse and booing, which interrupted his fighting statement, which the convention managers had managed to delay until the wee hours of the morning. It was a terrible hour for the relatively few black delegates who were present. Identified with the cause of republicanism, they had been served notice that the party they had fought for considered them just another bunch of niggers. They had no real standing in the convention, no clout. They were unimportant and ignored.
Well, I think that Senator Goldwater is going to shock a whole lot of people by putting up a better fight than most people expect him to, because white people in America, by and large, are becoming increasingly conservative and also very militantly against the fast pace that they think that our people are pressing them toward. So Goldwater stands a better chance than a whole lot of people think.
If Mr. Goldwater is elected president, we will see some very dark days in the United States, and I'm afraid we would move down the path of fascism. There's no way to deal with this problem but to be honest. I'm not predicting, I'm not advocating a night of social disruption, neither am I setting forth a threat. But as a social analyst, I must admit that if Mr. Goldwater is elected President of the United States, we will probably see much more violence growing out of the discontent, the restlessness, and the frustration of people caught in poverty-stricken positions and people who are caught in oppressive positions of racial injustice.
We represent the majority of the people in Alabama who hate Negroism, Catholicism, Judaism, and all the isms of the whole world. So said Robert Creel of the Alabama Ku Klux Klan. He also said, I like Barry Goldwater. He needs our help. Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd.
Americans of every race and color have died in battle to protect our freedom. Americans of every race and color have worked to build a nation of widening opportunities. Now, our generation of Americans has been called on to continue the unending search for justice within our own borders. We believe that all men are created equal, yet many are denied equal treatment. We believe that all men have certain unalienable rights, yet many Americans do not enjoy those rights. We believe that all men are entitled to the blessings of liberty, yet millions are being deprived of those blessings, not because of their own failures, but because of the color of their skin. The reasons are deeply embedded in history and tradition and the nature of man. We can understand without rancor or hatred how this all happened, but it cannot continue. Our Constitution, the foundation of our republic, forbids it. The principles of our freedom forbid it. Morality forbids it. And the law I will sign tonight forbids it.
Are you concerned perhaps about the Democrats taking advantage of this?
After Lyndon Johnson, the biggest faker in the United States, having opposed the Civil Rights Act for all the years of his life, this is the phoniest individual that ever came around.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
And while I read this morning, I was listening to the news in the car radio, and it said that they're voting today in the Senate of our nation to make this, or to make a national holiday of the birth of Martin Luther King, Jr. Now, I want to make my feelings known about that. I'm totally in opposition to it. I agree with Senator Helms. You say you're a racist, and you're a liar. I think it'd be far better to make a national holiday of the birthday of George Washington Carver. He's black, now call me a racist. I'd love to do it. I'd love for the Senate today to make a national holiday for George Washington Carver, who said, I'd rather be a black man in America than any other man in any other nation on the face of the earth. I'd love, how about Booker T. Washington? See? I mean, no, Mr. Helms is not a racist. Your liberal left-wingers are trying to make him look like a bigot when he's not. I have in my files, in my office, a picture of Martin Luther King taken in a communist school. Have it in my files. Now, the truth is, I'm going to tell you why today, that this, and he'll be a national holiday. We're not going to take it. No way. No way. We may take George Washington Carver or Booker T. Washington, but I'm saying that it wouldn't pass today, but the senators are saying privately we'd commit political suicide back home if we voted against this bill. Everything is for political suicide. And I'll say this too. Mr. Reagan is going to sign it when he doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe it. When he talks to Mrs. Reagan, he doesn't say, boy, he deserves to be, have a holiday in his name. He doesn't say that. But you know what? Mr. Reagan is not man enough to do what he believes. And the Senate of the United States today, the senators are not, and the truth is, it's accepted in all of our nation that something is all right if it is for political expediency. I'm saying we just about lost all semblance of masculinity in this nation.
Dr. King, the columnists Evans and Novak recently charged that the moderate Negro leaders, including you, have feared to point out the degree of communist infiltration in the civil rights movement. Have communists infiltrated the movement?
I certainly don't think so, Mr. Spivak, and I would like to vigorously deny that. I have no evidence for such an accusation, and I might say that in our bylaws, certainly in SCLC and the NAACP and CORE and SNCC and the Urban League and all of the civil rights organizations, we make it clear that communists cannot be in official positions and cannot be in the membership. Beyond this, I think I could say that the philosophical undergirdings of our movement would make communism impossible and would have communists on alien territory. For our movement has been based and is still based on a philosophy of nonviolence.
Dr. King, the AP reported the other day that a picture of you taken in 1957 at a Tennessee interracial school is being plastered all over Alabama billboards with the caption, Martin Luther King at a communist training school. Will you tell us whether that was a communist training school and what you were doing there?
Well, number one, I don't think it was a communist training school. In fact, I know it wasn't. The Highlander Folk School, which was referred to in that particular article, was a school that pioneered in bringing Negroes and whites together at a time when it was very unpopular to train them for leadership all over the South, and I think they did an able job in doing it. This school was supported by some of the great Americans such as Eleanor Roosevelt, Reinhold Niebuhr, Harry Golding, and many others that I could name. Secondly, the fact is that I never attended the school as far as training goes. I was there about 1 hour back in 1957 or 8. I went to deliver an address for the 25th anniversary of the Highlander Folk School. I got there about 15 minutes before I was to speak. I spoke about 45 minutes, and then I left immediately after my speech, and I think that's a pretty short period to get any training.
Mr. Wicker. Dr. King, your movement...
Commission, some of com simps, and the cause of it all was communist dominated. The riots in this country are absolutely communist inspired and communist dominated. When I was a member of the Communist Party, the communists ordered me to incite other of my people to riot.
I'm Julia Brown.
For 9 years, I was a member of the Communist Party, serving as an undercover agent for the FBI.
There's one thing that bothers me, and that, as a Negro yourself, why do you talk so bitterly against Martin Luther King and a lot of these other people of your race?
Well, let me tell you something. I don't put my race before I do my country. Being a Negro woman doesn't matter to me who is a Negro or who is a white person. If they are enemies of our country, then they are certainly my enemies too. Well, I say it is frightening, and it should be frightened to the entire American people that he has demanded $10 billion. And if he doesn't get it, then there may be riots this summer. Martin Luther King is nothing but a blackmailer, and he should be arrested for blackmailing because he certainly has blackmailed the United States government.
I think we've got to face the fact that communism is a fact in the world, that millions and millions of people live under communist regimes, and we've got to face the fact that communism is a rival political system. I think it is very unfortunate that we grew up in a generation, particularly during the McCarthy era, when we were almost forced to have a kind of morbid, almost paranoid attitude toward communism. And we failed to see it as a rival political system. We came to see it as a kind of monolithic bloc that was out to take over the whole world. I think we've come to see, at least many people have come to see, that the things that we talked about a few years ago just aren't true. Communism hasn't proved to be this big monolithic bloc. Russian communism today is certainly different from classical communism, and we've seen changes within the communist system, and we've seen conflicts within communism itself. For instance, the conflict between Russia and China demonstrates that communism has variations. So that I think we've got to honestly face the fact that communism is a fact in the world, and we cannot continue to live with this kind of morbid fear of communism that characterized so many of the days ahead. Now, it so happens that communism is a system that I disagree with philosophically. I would not prefer to live under a communist system. I happen to feel that the great moments of history have been those moments when individuals have been left free to think and to act. And I feel that communism often stands in the way of certain First Amendment privileges that we have in America, for instance, that I just couldn't adjust to.
Do you believe in white supremacy?
No, we're not white supremacists.
But why have a group that has the baggage of the violence of the Ku Klux Klan when you could, you know?
That is back from the 1800s and the 1960s. We are a different Klan. We're a Christian, civil rights, white organization.
But the Loyal White Knights has been putting racist literature throughout the country.
Well, about Martin Luther King, he was a communist and he was.
What do you think?